We will have to repent in this generation, not merely for the hateful words and actions of the bad people, but for the appalling silence of the good people. Human progress never rolls in on wheels of inevitability. It comes through the tireless efforts of people willing to be co-workers with God. And without this hard work, time itself becomes an ally of the forces of social stagnation. We must use time creatively, in the knowledge that the time is always ripe to do right. Now is the time to make real the promise of democracy and transform our pending national elegy into a creative psalm of brotherhood and sisterhood. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. What is needed is a realization that power without love is reckless and abusive, and that love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love, implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is love correcting everything that stands against love. And this is what we must see as we move on. We must come to see that the end we seek is a society at peace with itself, a society that can live with its conscience. That will be a day not of the white man, not of the black man. That will be the day of man as man. I know you are asking today, how long will it take? I come to say to you this afternoon, however difficult the moment, however frustrating the hour, it will not be long, because truth pressed to earth will rise again. How long? Not long, because no lie can live forever. How long? Not long, because you still reap what you sow. How long? Not long, because the arm of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. I'm Rabbi Susan Abramson, coming to you from the sanctuary of Temple Shalom Emeth in Burlington, Massachusetts. And once again, it's been another horrible week for our country. We'll look back on this time as one of the darkest in our nation's history. Yesterday, the House just voted to impeach the president for a second time. So we're all still reeling from the events of last week, and the new administration is not yet in office. So we're still in that time very much of being in limbo. It also happens to be the beginning of Martin Luther King Jr. weekend, when we think about that great civil rights leader and all that he did for our country and to further the cause of racial equality. And to shine a light on racism in our country. And we've seen more and more of that ugly oppression and bigotry of racism in our country just over the past week or so, particularly with the riots at the Capitol building. So we think about that, and we think about this week's Torah portion, in which the Pharaoh has hardened his heart numerous times. Every time Moses and Aaron come to speak to Pharaoh, he hardens his heart and keeps them enslaved. And this is a very troubling part of our Torah commentary, because it says that initially God caused Pharaoh's heart to be hardened. But then later on, God was not needed to interfere with the hardening of Pharaoh's heart, because it was already too hard to be broken, for him to feel any sort of remorse or reconciliation or compassion for anybody other than himself. And so it's something that we all wrestle with. Why would God have hardened Pharaoh's heart, and what eventually caused Pharaoh to be like that? And it's really a source of evil within Pharaoh's heart. So we think about that. We think about, obviously, the leadership of our country and how they're responding to recent events. We think about how our hearts, in a sense, are hardened towards those who don't agree with us politically, and how very, very difficult it is for us to open ourselves to another person's point of view and to accept them and not just feel total anger towards somebody who is on a different end of the political spectrum from ourselves. So that's kind of a theme for this week's Torah portion that I'm thinking about this week, and what we can do to open our hearts again to each other. And I also wanted to end with a little sense of hope, because this week we begin the new month of Shabbat, which is the month of hope and rebirth and renewal. It's the month, a little later in the month, we will be celebrating Tu B'Shvat, the New Year of the Trees. It's the beginning of springtime in Israel. And so we need to end on a note of hope. It's Shabbat. We're only supposed to think about our blessings, not about the things which upset us or harden us or anger us. And so we think about this new month. It's a new month. We've got a new year. We've got Shabbat. We've got a bright future ahead of us. And all we can do is focus on the hope that things will improve for us and for our country and our own ability to deal with our situation in our country. So Shabbat Shalom. And now we're going to continue with the singing of Psalm 96, Shiru Adonai. Sing a new song to God. We all need to sing a lot now to raise our spirits to be able to celebrate Shabbat.
To God, all the earth, a new song. I will sing unto God a new song. Sing unto God, and we'll all sing along. All the earth, a new song unto God. Shiru Adonai, kol haaretz. Shiru Adonai. Sing unto God, all the earth, a new song. I will sing unto God a new song. Sing unto God, and we'll all sing along. All the earth, a new song unto God. Shiru Adonai. Sing a new song unto God.
And we now continue with the singing of L'Chadodi, welcoming the Sabbath bride.
L'Chadodi, L'Chad Kala, B'nei Shabbat, L'Kadala. L'Chadodi, L'Chad Kala, B'nei Shabbat, L'Kadala. Shamor v'zachor, v'imo evad, Ishmiyanu el hamiuchad. Adonai echad, u'shemo echad, u'shem tiferet v'litiyah. L'Chadodi, L'Chad Kala, B'nei Shalom, Agteret Ba'ala, Gam B'Simcha, U'Sala, Toch Emunei, Am Segula, Boi Kala, Echad Lodi, Lekrat Kala,
I'd now like to invite Richard Finkelman to do a little special reading, followed by his wife Ellen Finkelman lighting the Shabbat candles for us this evening on page 120.
God, who may abide in your house? Who may dwell in your holy mountain? Those who are upright, who do justly, who speak the truth within their hearts, who do not slander others or wrong them, or bring shame upon them, who scorn the lawless, but honor those who walk with God, who give their word and, come what may, do not retract, who do not exploit others, who never take bribes. Those who live in this way shall never be shaken.
These lights are only flickering flames, yet flames illume our uncertain steps. Flames purify and renew, soften and refine. They brighten and make warm. Flames remind us of Sabbaths long past and of their beauty that delighted our hearts. May these flames inspire us to work for that great Shabbat of peace. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav, vetzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Blessed are you, O God, ruler of the universe, by whom we are sanctified when we fulfilled the mitzvah of rekindling the light of Shabbat.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Amen, 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 amen.
Please rise if you are able for the Baruch Hu, our call to worship on page 146. Praise Adonai, to whom praise is due forever. Praise be Adonai, to whom praise is due, now and forever.
Baruch hu et Adonai Hamavorach. Baruch Baruch Adonai Hamavorach Leolam Vaed.
Page 148.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaruo ma'ariv aravim, b'chachma poteach sha'arim, uvit vuna mashaneh hitim, umachalif et hazmanim, umsader et hakokavim, b'mishratecha barachea kirtzono.
Page 149. This is an hour of change. Within it we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? This is the hour of change, and within it we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? Baruch atah Adonai Hama'ariv Arivim.
Page 150.
Ahavat Olam Bid Yisrael Amcha Ahavta Amcha Ahavta Torah u'mitzvot Chukim u'mishpatim Otanu lemadeta Otanu lemadeta Al Ken Adonai Eloheinu bishachvenu uvkumenu nasiach bechukecha v'nismach b'divrei Toratcha uv'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed ki hem chayenu v'yorech yameinu Uvahem nege yomam v'layla nege yomam v'layla Yahavatcha al tasir mimenu le'olamim Baruch atah Adonai Ohev Amo Yisrael Ohev Amo Yisrael.
We now continue our service with the most important of all Jewish prayers, the Shema. Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. Blessed is God's glorious majesty forever and ever. On page 152 and 153.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed.
Please be seated. We now continue with the Via Hafta on page 154.
Yahavta et Adonai Elohecha B'kol levavcha uv'kol nafshecha uv'kol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'lechtecha v'derech uv'shachpecha uv'kumecha uv'kshartam le'ot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot ben einecha uchtavtam
על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
You shall love Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Take to heart these instructions with which I charge you this day. Impress them upon your children. Recite them when you stay at home and when you are away, when you lie down and when you get up. Bind them as a sign on your hand and let them serve as a symbol on your forehead. Inscribe them on the doorpost of your house and on your gates. Thus you shall remember to observe all my commandments and to be holy to your God. I am Adonai your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am Adonai your God. Adonai Elohechem Emeth.
In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth. The high heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love. From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bound ourselves to your way. Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, time and again we overcame oppressive forces. Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your wisdom from a world redeemed. Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be one and at peace. Then we shall rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea.
We now continue with the singing of Mi Chamocha, the song the Israelites sang when they crossed the Red Sea to freedom from Pharaoh's grip, on page 158.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש. נורא תהילות אוסף תהלה, נורא תהילות אוסף תהלה, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. מלכותך ראו בניך, בוקע ים לפני משה ומרים. זה אלי אנו ויאמרו, זה אלי אנו ויאמרו. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד.
We now continue with the Hashkivenu prayer on page 160. The Hashkivenu prayer is really an important one for us this week. It talks about how God will shelter us with God's compassion and with God's peace, and how we live underneath God's umbrella. And so we think about how God is around us, supporting us, and helping us deal with whatever issues we face in our lives at this moment.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu L'shalom, L'shalom. V'ha'amidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha Shelter us beneath thy wings, O Adonai. Guard us from all harmful things, O Adonai. Keep us safe throughout the night, till we wake with morning's light. Teach us, God, wrong from right. Amen. Amen. Amen.
Continue with the singing of Vishamru. The people of Israel shall keep Shabbat, observing Shabbat throughout the generations as a covenant for all time, on page 162.
Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam b'rit olam. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam b'rit olam. B'ni uvein B'nei Yisrael, Ori le'olam. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam b'rit olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et ha-shamayim ve'et ha'aretz. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam b'rit olam. Uvayom hashvi'i shavat vayinafash, shavat vayinafash. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam b'rit olam.
We now rise, if we are able, for the next section of our service called the Tefillah on page 164.
Anananananana Adonai, Ananananana Svatai Tivta, Ananananana Ufi Agid Tehilatecha, Ananananana Adonai, Ananananana Svatai Tivta, Ananananana Ufi Agid Tehilatecha, Ananananana Adonai, Ananananana Svatai Tivta, Ananananana Ufi Agid Tehilatecha, Ananananana Adonai, Ananananana Svatai Tivta, Ananananana Ufi Agid Tehilatecha, Ananananana Adonai, Ananananana Svatai Tivta, Ananananana ufi yagid tehilatecha.
Please turn to page 166. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzhak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'konei hakol, v'zocher chazei avot v'imahot, umevi gula livnei v'neihem, l'ma'an shemo b'ahava. Melech ozer, u'moshia u'magen, Baruch atah Adonai, magen, Avraham v'Ezrat Sarah.
Page 168. Atah gibor le'olam Adonai, mechayei hakol atah rav lehoshia, mechalkel chayim bechesed, mechayei hakol berachamim rabim, somet noflim berofei cholim, umatir asurim, umchayim emunato, lishenei afar, Micha mocha ba'al gevurot, umido melech, melech memi, umchayeh, umatzmiach Yeshua, v'ne'eman atah lehachayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, mechayeh hakol. Page 170. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, Ukdoshim b'chol yom yehalu hachsela, Baruch atah Adonai ha'el hakadosh.
Please be seated. Page 173.
May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai, Makadesh HaShabbat.
We continue with the singing of Shalom Rav, a song for peace, on page 178.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki atahu melech Adon lechol hashalom. Ki atahu melech Adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. V'tov be'enecha levarich et Amcha Yisrael b'chol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. תשים לעולם, תשים לעולם.
Page 179. Grant us peace, your most precious gift, O eternal source of peace. and give us the will to proclaim its message to all the peoples of the earth. Bless our country as a safeguard of peace and its advocate among the nations. May contentment reign once again within our borders. May health and happiness return to our homes. May we strengthen the bonds of friendship and fellowship between us and among all the inhabitants of every land. Plant virtue in all of our souls, and may the love of your name hallow every home and every heart. Praise to you, Eternal One, who blesses our people with peace, and may God bless our country with peace. Amen. We now continue our service with the Misha Beirach Get Well prayer on page 371. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal those who are ill. This evening we think in particular of Ruth Pernick, Rabbi Ellen Weinberg Dreyfus, Gina Rippin, Al Friedman, Ellen Waldron, Lori Gordon. We also think about all of those who are suffering from this horrible COVID disease. We think of our whole country, how we all need healing at this moment, and how we need to help each other with support and with words of kindness and comfort. May the Blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for all of our health to be restored and all of our strength to be revived. May God swiftly send all of us a complete renewal of body and spirit. And let us say, Amen. And if you'd like to add a name of somebody in particular who you'd like to either raise up by verbally saying their name or in your heart, you may add those names at this moment. We continue with the Misha Beirach Get Well prayer. We pause for a moment of silent prayer.
This is a song that we sing as part of the liturgy for every Shabbat service, but this is a different version from the one we usually do. It's a more lyrical version written by Jeff Klepper. The song is Ose Shalom, a very important song, a very important prayer, meaning grant us peace.
say shalom, shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, amen. Oh, say shalom, shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. V'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen.
So it's my pleasure and my honor to introduce three members of Temple Shalom Emeth Social Justice Committee, Fran Rosenberg, Phyllis Neufeld, and Martha Simon. They're each going to talk a little bit about all of the hard work they've been doing with our Social Justice Committee and our whole congregation to talk about and raise up the value of how we can overcome systemic racism and all of the racism which we've grown up with and which we unknowingly and unwittingly participate in, and how we can improve as members of our society. So take it away.
Shabbat Shalom. My name is Fran Rosenberg, and I'm part of a subgroup of the Temple Shalom Emeth Social Justice Committee that has been working to lead our congregation in learning more about issues of racism in our community. In honor of Martin Luther King Day, Rabbi Abramson asked some of us to share our thoughts on this ongoing work. In my work as a public educator, I've taken many courses, read many books, and done a great deal of reflection about how to make my classrooms and the schools that I run more culturally proficient and anti-racist. This year, I continued to think about these issues in response to national events and through my work with the TSC Social Justice Committee, as we thought about how to help our Temple community address issues of local and national racism. For a long time, I thought I got it. After all, my family had experienced persecution and anti-Semitism, and I was very aware that I was part of a religious minority. Over the past few years, I've learned a lot about my own blind spots and realized that although being Jewish gives me an understanding of what it is like to be seen as an outsider, I have many invisible privileges as a college-educated, heterosexual, able-bodied white person. My Jewish values compel me to continue learning and to take a more active role in combating the deeply rooted institutional and structural racism that exists in the United States.
I'm Phyllis Neufeld, Chair of the Social Justice Committee at Temple Shalom Emeth. And in the anti-racist training that we did, there were three main ideas that we strove to communicate. Number one was we are each in a different place in this journey of learning about and working to end racism in our country, our town, our temple, and ourselves. We're not judging anyone, and we want to help everyone learn more. None of us are experts, but some of us have some experience in our personal and professional lives. Second, it's really important to talk about race, but it's very difficult. We can call this a difficult conversation, perhaps a courageous conversation. Black people must talk about it frequently. White people have never had to. White folks have the choice to educate ourselves. However, Black folks experience and must live with racism every day. And third, we live in a society that is institutionally and systemically set up to support white supremacy and racism. If someone does something or says something that's racist, it does not make them a bad person. It means they did or said something that was racist. It means that we need to work to learn how to be anti-racist, how to act and speak without supporting the racist system. If we are not actively anti-racist, then we are supporting the racist system in this country. The more we become aware of our own implicit bias, the more we can grow and help eradicate racism. The ideas we discussed are all embodied in Reform Judaism's platform and espoused by the ADL. The ADL mandate says, quote, "We must commit to learning how the legacy of slavery and institutionalized racism continues to infect our institutions, causing trauma and pain to Black communities. We must reckon with the ways in which our actions or inaction have contributed to these injustices. And we must commit to turning our education into action by following the lead of others, including many Jews of color, who have been doing this work for decades." End quote.
As we remember and celebrate the life and work of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I think it is valuable to consider his own words. Here are some excerpts from his famous letter from a Birmingham jail in April 1963. "I must make two honest confessions to you, my Christian and Jewish brothers. First, I must confess that over the past few years, I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's greatest stumbling block in his stride toward freedom is not the Ku Klux Klanner, but the white moderate, who is more devoted to order than to justice, who constantly says, 'I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I cannot agree with your methods of direct action,' who paternalistically believes he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by a mythical concept of time and who constantly advises the Negro to wait for a more convenient season. Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection. You assert that our actions, even though peaceful, must be condemned because they precipitate violence. But is this a logical assertion? Isn't this like condemning a robbed man because his possession of money precipitated the evil act of robbery? Oppressed people cannot remain oppressed forever. The yearning for freedom eventually manifests itself, and that is what has happened to the American Negro. The Temple Shalom Emeth Social Justice Committee is planning further workshops led by experts in the field to help members of our congregation learn more about unconscious bias, white privilege, and anti-racist work. We will have the dates soon, and we hope that many of you will join us.
Before we conclude our service for this Shabbat, I wanted to just announce that our Social Justice Committee is going to be holding an unconscious bias workshop the late afternoon of Sunday, March 7th. And if you are interested in joining us for that or for any other temple activity, please reach out to us. I can be reached at the temple rabbi.abramson@verizon.net, or you may go to the temple website, shalom-emeth.org, and send me a message from there. We would love to have you participate in our community, join our community, and subscribe to this channel. We now turn to page 586 for one of the concluding sections of our service called the Elenu, which is a hope that the world will be brought together and united under God's values. Please rise.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסר הארץ, ומשה יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגבהי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד. אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, כך כתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשבות אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, והארץ מתחת. אין עוד.
And then all that has divided us will merge, and compassion will be wedded to power. And then softness will come to a world that is harsh and unkind, and both men and women will be gentle. And then both women and men will be strong, and then no person will be subject to another's will. And all will be rich and free and varied, and then the greed of some will give way to the needs of many. And then all will share equally in the earth's abundance, and then all will care for the sick and the weak and the old. And then all will nourish the young, and all will cherish life's creatures. And then all will live in harmony with each other and the earth. And then everywhere will be called Eden once again.
ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, היום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני, אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. אחד ושמו אחד, אחד ושמו אחד.
The introduction to the Qaddish Prayer, the prayer for those who have died, may be found on page 599. We think now of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died at this season in years past, and those whom we have drawn into our hearts with our own. We recall our temple member Sheldon Kramer, who died during this past week, and Eliza Major, who died during this past month. And we add to their names the names of those whose yahrzeits occur this week: Fred Simon and Sheila Rosenberg. And at this time, if there are names of others you would like us to keep in our hearts and our minds as we prepare to recite the Qaddish Prayer, you may say their names aloud or in your hearts. And we also recall the hundreds of thousands of who have died and are continuing to die from the COVID disease around our country and around the world. Zichronam livracha, may all of their memories be for a blessing. Please rise and body your spirit to recite the Qaddish Prayer on page 598. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shmei rabbah, ba'alma divrach yerutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon u'vyomechon u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'v'yizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach l'olam l'almei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudashah b'richu, L'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, d'amiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shmaya, v'chayim alenu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, alenu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who creates harmony on high Bring peace to us, to our country, to all Israel and all the world, and let us say together, Amen. You may be seated. We now continue with the Kiddush on page 123, Rise if you are able, and that will be followed by the Motzi, the blessing over the bread.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho, באהבה וברצון הנחילנו. זיכרון למעשה וראשית. כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר לציאת מצרים. כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחילתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני, מקדש השבת.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lehem min haaretz.
So I'd like to conclude the service with a very short quote, also from Martin Luther King. Use me, God. Show me how to take who I am, who I want to be, and what I can do, and use it for a purpose greater than myself. All of us at this moment, we should be keenly aware of our responsibility, that it is up to us to make this world a better place for all. Shabbat Shalom. And now we conclude our service with a song, Od Yavo Shalom Elenu, wishing that peace will come to all of us in our time and very soon. And that will be followed by a little snippet of We Shall Overcome, which we sang in our congregation following the Charlottesville riots in 2017.
Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, V'al Kulam. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, V'al Kulam. Salam Aleinu v'al kol ha'olam. Salam, salam, salam Aleinu v'al kol ha'olam. Salam, salam. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu v'al kulam. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu v'al kulam. Salam Aleinu v'al kol ha'olam. Salam, salam, salam Aleinu v'al kol ha'olam. Salam, salam. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu v'al kulam. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu v'al kulam.
We shall overcome.